Imagine building a business that doesn't require contracts, where clients stay long-term, not because they're forced to, but because they're actually thriving. What if I told you that focusing on leads now could change everything for you in 2 years?
And if you're trying to grow fast, acquisitions and picking the right niche are key, but there's a big mistake that people are often making.
Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll know how to grow your local SEO agency without all the contracts, without the dodgy gimmicks, or generic growth hacks that never work.
Plus, we'll show you how to use these tips to grow. You know, if you don't hate money.
Hello, I like money.
All right, Joy, let's kick this off with a big question. Why don't you believe in having contracts?
So I kind of see contracts as being like handcuffs on clients. If we're doing our job right, clients should want to stay because you're actually helping their business, not because they're legally obligated to.
All right, so you're telling me that you make sales without a, you're stuck with us for a year type contract, and it actually works, and that's how you've been growing your business.
It actually works like magic. It turns out, if you're actually good at SEO, clients will want to stay. And they'll want to stay long-term because you are making their business money through growing their traffic and leads on Google. Again, you're not forcing them to stay. There's no legal obligation. Imagine that.
In many, many ways, it just seems logical. If you're doing a good job, if the business is getting a return on their investment from you, why would they leave in the first place? It does beg the question, doesn't this hurt your client retention rate? Because, everyone loves a good contract that forces them to stay and pay for something regardless of whether or not they're getting results.
Yeah, actually, no, we have not found that this hurts retention rate. Our average client stays with us for about 2.5 years. Again, they stick around because they're making money, not because they're in a never-ending contract that they actually forgot they even signed.
So let's go back to the sales process. Tell us a little bit about that. Does this make it easier, harder to close business? Talk about that.
Yeah, so I actually find it makes the sales process much easier because people are more likely to pull the trigger when they don't have to sign a 1 or 2 year contract, knowing that, hey, if we don't do our jobs, they can leave right away. They don't have to stick around for months. I would say that actually helps us make the sale easier and faster.
That makes sense. Now, if you're thinking this sounds like a huge gamble, wait until you hear some of our other approaches. You won't believe what we learned. Why is it important to think 2 years ahead when it comes to lead generation?
So when I started my agency, Sterling Sky, I already had a huge following. It was possible and fairly easy for me to generate leads organically. I already had a huge following on social media. I had a newsletter with subscribers. I also had a blog. So when I put out the announcement that, hey guys, I'm starting an agency, leads started coming in naturally.
Well, that must be nice to have a huge army of fans throwing money at you, Joy. But what about the rest of us mere mortals and second fiddles that don't have a massive following?
Good question. If you don't have a solid inbound lead source when you start your agency, you are going to have a brutal first year. Sorry to break it to you, but that is the reality. I get messages all the time from people on different social media platforms who are starting an agency in this exact thing. They'll be like, Joy, I want to start selling local SEO. And I'll be like, cool, how long have you been doing a local SEO? Oh, like 6 months. You should not start an agency. So you could try with 0 following, just go out there and try and sell it. But spoiler, it is not going to be easy.
All right, so moving on from spoiling everybody's grand plans. Okay, real talk. Can you give us an example of how focusing on long-term lead generation led to results?
Yeah, great example. We decided to invest in YouTube. So recently, a few years ago, we were nowhere on YouTube, didn't do any videos, didn't care at all. So I decided this was a strategy that we needed to heavily invest in. And I went and hired a YouTube coach. We spent over a year creating videos and content. I can't even tell you how many hours were put into it before we saw a single lead. However, fast forward a couple years, today it is in our top 3 lead sources. So yeah, patience is a virtue, or so they say.
Wait a second. So you spent over a year with 0 leads. I'm sure you have lots of people telling you and messaging you on what a bad idea was to invest all this time and energy into YouTube.
Yep, just a few of them.
So maybe a quick thanks to all our viewers that are debunking that myth right now. Stick with us to find out why acquisitions don't always go as planned. The story might make you rethink your next move. It's a good lesson on why you should always expect the unexpected. All right, let's dive into acquisitions. You've made some key acquisitions over the years that have helped your agency in a big way. Can you tell us about some of those?
The way I see acquisitions is that they are buying assets, not just a book of clients. If you're buying an agency for its clients, you are doing it wrong. For me, I'm always after assets that will generate leads for me long term.
So it's not about instant gratification. So then what is the end game with these acquisitions?
For me, it's all about building those long-term lead generating channels. For example, I bought Local U back in 2019. It's a conference series that we host all about local SEO. Exactly what I wanted for future lead gen.
2019, so right before the world imploded with that pandemic.
Coronavirus. Everyone has been asking the same question. I know I have. How bad is the pandemic going to be?
Bold move. Did you happen to consult a psychic that hates you?
I think I did. The timing was total trash. The pandemic hit and I'm like, great, I just bought a ghost town. But instead of crying into my spreadsheets, we pivoted to online conferences. And guess what? We are still getting solid leads from that acquisition. So it was like a pandemic pivot that actually worked.
Pivot! 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 Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
In the local search forum? Really, Joy? Another forum? People still use those?
So my former mentor, Linda Bouquet, she was selling her forum back in 2018. It's basically a community all about local SEO discussions, mostly free, and it's actually perfect for lead gen. It did not pay off immediately. Again, we have owned this asset now for many, many, many years. So it was a long-term play. But I knew that this investment would pay off eventually.
Shout out to Linda Bouquet. So another one that wasn't about instant success. How has it paid off for you?
It absolutely has paid off. Both Local U and the Local Search Forum are solid lead generation providers. We get people all the time that contact us because they heard about tips on our forum or saw a thread with advice that we were giving out. For me, it's always been about long-term sustainability and not expecting immediate results.
You also acquired Classy Brain in 2022. You seem to love acquisitions in the middle of pandemics. How did that one go for you?
Yeah, Classy Brain was definitely a unique situation. So the previous owner, Craig Mount, is a friend of mine, and he actually used to hire me to train him on SEO. This is how we met. So when I bought the agency from Craig, he went and told all his clients, like, guys, you are now going to be dealing directly with the person that trained me on how to do SEO.
That sounds like a pretty strong selling point. So did that help with client retention?
You think it would, right? But the problem is the clients really loved Craig. They were loyal to him, not to the agency. And despite Craig's best efforts and explanation, they did not want to stick around after the change. So lesson learned here is that people love people, not companies.
What did you end up taking away from the Classy Brain acquisition? What were the lessons that you learned?
Buying an agency does not guarantee you retention or even revenue, especially when feelings are involved. Let's be honest, people are very unpredictable.
And also, if you're going to make an acquisition from someone, make sure they aren't so darn lovable. Stick around, because up next, we're going to tell you about the single most expensive mistake we made when we tried to do it all. You don't want to miss it. Let's talk about niches. Why is it so important to pick one instead of pretending that you know everything?
Because if you try to do everything, you're going to be mediocre at best or a total dumpster fire at worst. We specialize in local SEO. It's what we are good at. And we only work with a select number of industries. For example, personal injury lawyers are one of our strongest niches. We are great at it because we know what works.
It's kind of like focusing specifically on mastering Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instead of also being a boxer, Muay Thai, wrestling, sumo, etc. You get it? And why not offer a million services?
I learned this the hard way. We tried offering social media, we tried offering web design. Both were epic failures. Now we stick to what we are best at, which is local SEO and pay-per-click on Google.
You've always been an advocate for hiring experienced professionals over entry-level staff. This is the first time you're sharing this story, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Can you tell us why this approach has worked so well for you?
So local SEO is very complex, and I just didn't want to waste time training people. I wanted people who could come in and hit the ground running, not a bunch of entry-level people that are like, hey, Joy, what's a keyword?
So who are the first people you hired and what made you choose them?
Yeah, so I hired 2 part-time people immediately, like right away, the second I had a client. Both of them each had about a decade of experience doing their jobs. The first one was someone who did Google Ads, and I hired her because I didn't really have as much experience as she did. I also didn't really want to do ads. It wasn't my passion. I wanted to stick to SEO. The other one was a technical SEO expert, which is frankly an area of SEO that I am pretty weak in. Shout out to Deborah Hickey and Yan Gilbert. So I knew that in order to get quality results for clients, I needed people that could get results already, not somebody that I had to wait 6 months until they were trained for them to actually know how to do local SEO. Hiring experienced people basically lets you hit the ground running so that you avoid these costly mistakes that frankly will cost you clients.
How did bringing in these experts early on shape your agency's growth?
It made a huge difference. Hiring skilled people right from the get-go meant that we could execute better campaigns immediately. Plus, it freed me up to focus on local SEO strategy, which is what I'm best at and what I enjoy doing. I didn't have to worry about the technical SEO or the Google Ads accounts. I knew that they were in good hands.
Speaking of strategy, you should stop focusing exclusively on vanity metrics like rankings. Stick with us to find out why leads, not position one on Google, are the real way to measure success. Let's talk about focusing on leads instead of rankings. I know you've got a powerful story from the early days in your industry. Can you share a little bit about what you learned way back when?
Yeah, so way back in 2006, I started in this industry working actually in sales for a pretty sketchy company. My job was to cold call insurance agents all day long and tell them why they needed to be on the first page of Google. The shady part of it was that the keywords that we were tracking and telling them, oh, we'll get you in the first position for this particular keyword, they didn't get any traffic. So we're selling all this stuff to people, they're ranking there, but there's literally zero value, 0 leads, 0 traffic, 0 business to the poor clients that this company was selling to. It was all about vanity metrics.
That sounds incredibly frustrating. What made you leave the company?
Because I wanted to stop celebrating being at the top of Google like it was some kind of trophy. It turns out leads and actual sales are what pays the bills, not that coveted #1 position.
Once you started your own agency, how did you change your approach to SEO?
From the very beginning, I made sure that our reports were focused on leads, not rankings. We only care about getting results if those results turn into actual business for our customers. Our reports show how our SEO efforts are increasing leads and specifically the types of leads that our customers want. That is what makes all the difference.
You've also taken a unique approach to sales. There is no separate sales team at Sterling Sky. Why did you decide to handle sales differently than the vast majority of agencies?
Yeah, so I actually don't even know if I've ever met an agency that doesn't have a split SEO team and sales team. Most agencies, they have a dedicated sales team. Certainly the focus of the 2 agencies that I worked at before Sterling Sky. Both of them had very large sales teams. That was a huge focus for the agency because they're the people that brought in all the money. And then there was like a separate SEO team that was in charge of delivering the results. I was one of the only people that was on both of these teams. The problem is sales teams often care about just getting in the deal, getting the lead, selling the client, doing whatever it takes. They often promise the moon and then deliver a rock. We do the sales of the service with the same people. And I found this to be one of the key strategies that has led to our success. We never have people on the phone promising things to clients that they know that we can't deliver. They're also able to answer some of the most complicated questions right off the get-go, which builds a lot of trust with those leads.
So it kind of sounds like instead of actually doing sales, you have people on the team who are educating business owners as to what it would be like to work with a company like Sterling Sky.
Yeah. So literally the people that are doing sales at Sterling Sky are also people that are working on accounts every single day. They are doing SEO. They know what SEO is. They know how to get results for customers. They sell through their knowledge and their experience, not through empty promises.
So by having the experts handle sales, you're ensuring that the clients get accurate information.
Exactly.
So there you have it. Tips from the trenches on how to build an agency that works for both you and your clients. We've covered everything from lead gen to acquisitions and even hiring the right people to scale.
If you found this helpful, please make sure you like the video and hit that subscribe button. If there's a question about running a local SEO agency that I didn't answer, feel free to leave it in the comments and we'll do our best to respond. Also, I'd love to know which tip stood out most to you.
Your feedback means a lot to us. So don't be shy. Let us know what you're struggling with and we'll make sure to help you in future videos. Remember, subscribing helps us create more valuable content for you.
See you in the next video.